everyone, Earthworm Jim here with Rhyme Signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of being such a groovy guy as I rocket through the sky. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new HMLTD album, The Worm.
The world, dreaming of the life, dream it all away.
Music, as much as it is my biggest passion in life and the thing I find myself most invested in, often finds itself plodding around the same old ideas and tropes, even within my usual beloved genre of progressive rock, which normally skirts around such roadblocks. There have been many albums this year that, while I've enjoyed them, I simply haven't been enthused about them. There's not been enough going on, or enough interesting ideas for me to want to expend the effort of talking about them. Sometimes music is just vanilla, which is fine, but for me to want to talk about something, then it has to be that little bit more. And that could be a bad record or a good record, but there's nothing more frustrating to a music critic than a middling record that swims in circles and never tries anything outside of the safest of routes. Great music, truly outstanding music, challenges you. It pushes against your established comprehension and considerations of what music can be and forges new trenches in your understanding and appreciation of it. So this obviously brings me to a point, finally, with the new record from UK-based art rock band HMLTD and their fascinating concept album, The Worm. This is my first time with the band, and The Worm is their sophomore record, with their debut West of Eden having come out in 2020. So these guys are pretty new to the scene, but you wouldn't think so with the maturity of the songwriting that's on display here. HMLTD feel like a band who've been tinkering around with experimental ideas for at least a decade now, and The Worm has the evocative feel and passion to it that only a band of significant experience would be likely to put out into the world. I've been trying to think of bands to compare these guys to, but it's been a little bit challenging. But I suppose on a surface level, the first to come to mind are the likes of Black Midi and Swans, which is weird for me, as while I adore HMLTD, I've never truthfully been able to get into Black Midi and Swans, although not for lack of trying, I assure you. There's also kind of a lot of familiarity with Pink Floyd on this record, specifically to The Wall, and I'll be getting into these similarities in due course. So, The Worm is a concept album, and some concept albums deal with the loss, death, rebirth, the cycle of life, and the concepts of higher thought. Others are more basic, detailing the chronicles of a protagonist and the challenges they face on their hero's journey, etc, etc. Then there's The Worm. Wow, yeah, this is, The record is set in a dystopian medieval England where the country is being devoured by a giant worm. Obviously. And it's up to us, the listener, to decide if this is a literal worm or a metaphorical one. You know, is the worm indeed a B-movie-sized colossus, or is the worm the hatred, envy, and ego of mankind that festers within us all? It's all delightfully thought-provoking and pretentious, and I've had a thoroughly good time coming up with my own interpretation of the lyrics. And much like the best concept albums, your own version of the truth of it all will be the most entertaining and real one. But a concept album needs more than just words to make itself relevant. Otherwise you might as well just go and read a book, right? The true delight of a concept album is how effectively a band can weave the music around the narrative construct and make it into something that couldn't work in any other medium. HMLTD have done an outstanding job in that regard with The Worm, as I can't envisage this working in any other fashion rather than just with your ears. Add visuals, you'll lose the subtext. Take away the music, and you'll have none of the spine-chilling fear and unease that comes with the dazzling instrumentation on the record. Now, I am gushing a little bit here, I know, but I assure you this is deserved. I mean, no, this isn't going to be a record that everyone loves. In fact, I've seen an equal number of people who despise this record as love it. This is a purely divisive album, a record genuinely made for the love of the artistry by a band unafraid to answer their muse and create what's truly within their hearts. Sales figures and radio airtime be damned. In that respect, you have to admire HMLTD, even if you don't especially enjoy this album. I feel that to create something as utterly mind-bogglingly niche as this and still manage to find an audience kind of gives me hope for the future of the industry. The record opens with an a cappella scene-setting narrative chorus evoking a kind of West End musical vibe. You can kind of imagine the whole cast standing on stage, dressed in white, all bleary-eyed and under a kind of hypnosis, before the leading track Wormlands kicks in and the Black Midi comparisons feel justified. It's acidic, it's jazzy, it's angular and unsettling. Traditional song structure means very little on The Worm. It's all about creating texture and fabricating an ethereal narrative, which is something that Wormlands manages effortlessly. This is honestly only really the start of things though, as subsequent tracks continue to push the album into more avant-garde and experimental pathways, but still manages to successfully drive the narrative further. The inclusion of gospel choir really elevates the album, providing a unique flavour to the discordant jazz and staccato riffing. The Worm sounds revelatory in its delivery, almost as if the entire experience is designed to be heard from the pews whilst the preacher delivers their sermon. Now, as much as I do love the music, it's the lyrical and vocal content on the album that really hooked me, and lead vocalist Henry Spachalski is a phenomenally gifted individual behind the microphone. He manages to strike that balance between mainstream-sounding pop crooning and barbaric and threatening shouts, modulating his voice perfectly within the narrative of the album. Softer moments where we're treated to more intimate reflections of the human emotion, like on track Days, gorgeous, gentle, haunting. But when things start getting a little bit nutty and we start feeling like we're descending into the pure chaos of a country going to hell in a handbasket, oh man, do we ever get that sensation in the vocals. It's honestly incredible to hear such diversity and commitment to the through line of the concept across the album's perfectly sized 41-minute runtime. It manages to never feel boring, to never feel bloated or unnecessary. Every moment of the record feels purposeful and deliberate. There's no fat, no excess, just lean, expertly cut music that exists for as long as it needs to. Now, it's the second half of the record that really gets me, starting from Saddest Worm Ever and continuing through Liverpool Street, the title track, Past Life Cinnamon's Song, and finale Lay Me Down, that the band really start to push their creative limits with mesmerising instrumental passages and deeply disturbing spoken word sections that bring me back to my earlier comments about this album evoking parts of Pink Floyd's The Wall. The back half of this record especially embraces a similar frenetic and accusatory tone of The Trial, with Spachalski entering what can only be described as succinctly as goblin mode towards the end of Saddest Worm Ever. You'll never hear the words cow, chicken, pig, human in that order in the same way ever again. We have what can only be described as a fourth wall break in Liverpool Street. I won't spoil it too much for you, but when the lyrics directly address the vocalist as suffering from delusions, in the manner of a doctor dictating case study notes, it makes you start to wonder what's really real within the world of this narrative. Is England really being devoured, or is this all in the head of one man? The final three hits of the title track, Past Life Cinnamon's Song, and Lay Me Down, is what made me abandon any reservations I might have been having and allowed me to embrace The Worm as one of the best records of 2023. The title track once again brings back the vibe of The Trial, as Spachalski channels the energy of a firebrand preacher, while his congregation in the form of the gospel choir rise up behind him and the orchestra swells behind the lyrical projection of the world-devouring worm that resides in all men. It's frankly jaw-dropping and one of the most shocking and attention-grabbing songs I've heard in 2023. Past Life Cinnamon's Song is my favourite cut from the album. The longest song at just over 7 minutes, you'll soon understand why it's got Cinnamon's Song in the title, as you'll be hard-pressed not to expect Nina Simone to start singing along in the background at times. It's a spectacular slice of deeply sinister, ethereally beautiful, jazz-infused art rock, and weaves in these incredible vocal punches against some of the most thrilling instrumentation across the whole record. Things close off with another introspective spoken word passage which makes you start to question the reality of the overall narrative even further. It's so artfully done, so bewitching in its subtleties that even after I've heard it more than 10 times, it still makes me think about the truth of everything in the record. The Worm closes off with the more positive sounding and uplifting Lay Me Down. It's a wonderful way to sign out the experience, as up until this point it can be an extremely heavy album, and one that is difficult to digest on face value. Lay Me Down is about the closest the album manages to a more traditional song structure, and it's like a much needed balm to the intensity of everything that's led up to this point. So, what else can I say about HMLTD's The Worm? Honestly, I feel like for as long-winded and overblown as my ramblings about this record have been, I could probably have kept going. This is one of the most creative, original and fascinating records I've heard in years. This is the most well-told and well-executed concept album in over a decade, and I applaud the band for their fearless creativity in what they've put together. As I mentioned earlier, this isn't going to be for everyone. The Worm is spectacularly pretentious, feeling more like a piece of performance art at times rather than a piece of music. But with how unique this feels, how unabashed it is in its own commitment to the narrative it's crafted, one has to applaud HMLTD for making one of 2023's best and most interesting records. Recommendation on this one is pretty easy for me. Grab this one in physical format. Don't miss out on what is certain to grace many a year-end list. I've got the limited edition clear vinyl on order, so I'm very excited for that to turn up in a couple of weeks, hopefully. And if you're not certain, I don't blame you. Maybe just give this one a couple of streams first. It might take a few to sink in, but once the worm has wormed its way in, there's a good chance it's never going to leave you. This is all, of course, just my opinion, as you guys know, so if you have listened to The Worm, please tell me what you thought about this record in the comments down below. Anything else coming out this year you think I should maybe check out, please let me know about it. Love to get around to giving it my own thoughts. If you did like this video, please do share it around with anyone else who you think would possibly enjoy it, and please do consider subscribing to the channel for more content. If you truly do love what I do as well, please also consider clicking my Ko-fi link in the description box down below. And until next time, guys, keep your rhyme signatures odd.